the takeover by the military in 2000, on the 1st of February, is the question of what form of federation the country might now take. Aung San Suu Kyi attempted, through what she called the Panglong II process, to refashion the federation that her father had formed in 1947, but that didn't produce answers that were enabled any constitutional amendment to go forward. And now what we are waiting for is to see what NUG would like to do with the new arrangement. And we, for our part in AMI, with the links we have to all forms of Australia, will contribute whatever support we can to the NUG and the next constitution drafting process that the country has. And we'll base that on the experience we have, not all of which is perfect by any means, which can be well explained in the second speech we'll have tonight from Janelle Saffin, who is a former federal member of parliament in Australia and currently a member of the New South Wales Parliament, but a person who has worked very closely with members of parliament of the Luthor in Myanmar, both as an advisor on the way the federation can work, but also as a mentor to members of the parliament of the Luthor. So the first speaker we have, and I think he's here. Minister Lian, you're here. I can see you there. I can see your bookcase anyway.
He's here.
If he's ready to come to speak, there he is. He's sitting down now. Minister, welcome. It's a great honor to have you and your bookcases with us. And we look forward very keenly to hearing what you can say about how the NUG sees the federal structure panning out when it's possible to make the adjustments necessary to the 2008 Constitution, which, as I understand it, the NUG has declared to be no longer running. Minister, would you like to speak now?
Are you inviting me to speak now, sir?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of time because we need to finish inside the 1 hour. So if you're able to speak for about 12 minutes, then Janelle Saffin will speak for about the same time, and that will give us good time for questions and answers. And I know there are several people in the audience tonight who have good questions they'd like to put to you both.
Well,
Minister,
thank you so very much for, thank you so very much for inviting me. The NUG governments, all the ministers and those who are working for this movement, our life is very much in difficult situation, but our people's life is more difficult, as you all know. So this is, I think we are in this position. And then since you all have following our movement very closely, I think we appreciate very much. And then we thankful to all of you for your support and your encouragement for the people of Burma, and then as well as for NUG government as a whole. And what is important in this movement and what is the difference between other movement or other part of our struggle? If we compare, if we look in historical perspective, I think we are now in a much better positions. The reason is that, for example, in 1962, when General Ne Win took over the state power, the military coup, I think their aims, their objective, and then the way they apply the methods all are the same. The military have the same method, the same tactic, the same objective. But in 1962, the reason was when ethnic groups demand for constitutional change based on the federalism, and that was known in 1961-62 as federal movement. General Ne Win prohibited that movement, so he came to power. And at that time, all the ethnic groups were united, but not the whole country. Unfortunately, Burma majority, Burma politicians and so on did not support for federal movement. So our movement in 1962 was not successful. And in 88 again, in 88, all the country was united in terms of democracy. But at that time also, we are not united in terms of federalisms and ethnic equality and so on. In terms of democracy, we were united. But in terms of federalism, we were not on the same positions. But in 2021, in these revolutions, the whole country is united in our purpose, both on federalism and democracy. So we are calling now for Federal Democracy Union. I think this is a big change. I think this is a big hope for all of us. And we are for democracy, we are for federalism. And then as we are united in our purpose and our objective, I think other factors also contribute for this movement. As you all know, our method of struggle against this military coup is, I think, several methods we are applying. Number one, of course, is protest on the street, which we applied in 1962, which we applied also in 1988. But now we applied again, but combining with other factors. The other factors is what we call is public worker strikes, that we call CDM movement, which we never applied in before. I think that is very effective. That is the method which virtually stop this government functioning mechanism. I think this is very effective. And then now if you look at the public workers, more than 70% of the country workers are now joining for CDM movement. All the CDMers are now registered with NUG government. And then we are raising funding, we are raising other activities, and then try to support those CDMers, those who are involved in that CDM movement, and then also helping in terms of COVID situation and so on. So if you compare the military councils, those who are working under military council and those who are registered under NUG government workers are much, much bigger. And I think this is very important factors. And then the third factors is, I think, PDF, People Defense Forces, which, for example, in the past 70 years, ethnic groups only are fighting against the central government by means of arms. But now the whole country, since the military council terrorizing the whole country, people are defend themselves. These people defense forces are now registered under NUG. I think this also is very, very important factor, which will give us, I think, a better hope for the future. Although we might be suffering along the way, we might sacrifice a lot of things, our life, our livelihood, and so on. But I think it will give us the good result at the end. And then another factor which is very, very important is people like you, overseas international friends, and as well as overseas Burmese community. In 1988 movement, we did not have this kind of support from overseas. And then we did not have overseas Burmese community. But those overseas Burmese community, for example, my generation, we came out from the country after engaging in 1988 democracy movement. I was a student, arrested 3 times, and then my generation, hundreds of thousands of people are now resettled in US, Europe, Australia, and other countries. These overseas Burmese community are one of our strength, our unity. For example, CRPH collected funding, and then within a few months, we could collect 10 million US dollar, 10 million US dollar, which is quite a lot of money. If you compare in 1988, we could not raise funding. We started, for example, the government, exile government, NCGUB government in 1992. But we could not raise funding a penny until 1997. We were out of money for almost 7-8 years. But now within few months, we could raise 10 million US dollar. This is, I think, very, very important factor, overseas Burmese community. And then above all, what is important is digitalization of our movement. In 1988, when we demonstrate in the Yangon, we did not know what happened in the other part of the street. We did not know what happened in the other part of the town, and then other town and city, other state. We did not know. But now we constantly see what is happening. the demonstration in rural areas, remote areas can see, alive. So I think this is uniting us, all the factors, street protest, CDM movement, overseas activities, and then PDF movement. All these are united by using digital internet activities. So our enemy, the regime, also know that this is our strength. So they try to cut off all the internet activities. And for example, now in Chin State, the fighting is intensified, and then they cut off this kind of activities. So this is where we are. And I think your support and your encouragement is essential. And then finally, what I would like to highlight is about my ministry. We are preparing for a new federal democracy union constitution. But the way that we are forming is that this constitution making, of course, should be done together with the people. Without the people, making constitution is more or less meaningless. So we are trying to engage with the people. And then the platform that we are using is, firstly, is NUCC. NUG is not alone. Together with NUG, there is NUCC, National Unity Consultative Council, where all the stakeholders are involved. Elected MPs, political parties, CDMers, CBOCSO, all ethnic arms organizations, and then also state-based organizations. So all these are coming together, and we are reviewing. Actually, I was in another meeting this morning, and then we are confirming all our charter again, and we will soon issue that the charter, and then we'll work accordingly. And our ministry will form constitutional drafting committee under NUCC, and together with NUCC, and then we will do our job most effectively as possible. This is where we are now. And of course, we need a lot of support in terms of technical assistance, in terms of knowledge assistance, in terms of many others, financial assistance. We need a lot. So we will count on you, and then we are hoping that you will help us more and more. And then I think without your help, I think we will not be able to do our job effectively. But as a global community, as all those who are loving for democracy and freedom, the freedom-loving people, we will work together for the better of humanity, and then also particularly for Burma, the people of Burma. We have been suffering long enough. It is too long. This is unacceptable. And then Min Aung Hlaing and his military council, the military coup is actually a failed coup, as I mentioned, many factors. And I think we will prevail, we will win. So we need your support and your help from in many ways. Thank you so very much. I will stop here, and then I think it will be better if you would have a few questions and so on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. That's very interesting. Minister Janelle will now speak, and you'll see if you look on the chat room alongside the Zoom, there are a lot of interesting questions already. When we've heard Janelle, I'll then move to the questions, and there are a couple of people in the audience who have a specialized knowledge of federation from a Myanmar perspective. They will ask some questions first, and then we'll go to the general questions, which will be consolidated. But you can see from those questions that there's intense interest in what you've said. So Janelle, would you like to speak next?
Thank you, Chris. And I'll acknowledge the Minister, Dr. Leon Sakong, and also Dr. Tunong Shui, NUG representative to Australia. And look, what I want to say is the federal story, to a very small degree, I've had involvement over the last few decades in Burma. And some of that has been with the minister. And federalism has been sort of equally desired and detested, and it's been a great fault line running through Burma. But right now, the challenge is extreme, but the opportunity is large. The opportunity is large to heal that fault line. And that's really what Dr. Leon was speaking to. And the search for identity in Burma has been fraught because ethnic nationalities have had to fight and search for their identity where they were demonized and treated lesser. But political compacts and constitutional settlements, which go to the heart of this, are characterized by that common or national identity. And that's what's eluded Burma. There's been state building, but little nation building, but more of that later. And some issues now are still the same. They still need to be resolved, but it is a different dynamic. It's a different heartbeat in this revolution. But it's through Burma that I became a student and teacher of federalism and constitutionalism. Teaching qualifications I already had. I had law qualifications, but no particular expertise in these weighty matters. My early work with Burmese friends was lawyers in law. International law, rule of law, Geneva Conventions, international humanitarian law. But the questions I got regularly from the Burmese, and particularly ethnic nationalities with whom I spent a lot of time on the borders, over a few decades, were repeatedly, regularly about federalism and constitutionalism. How does federalism work in Australia? Ask that question today. That's another topic during COVID. But it was who owns the natural resources, who has taxing power, who controls the police, etc. How do you design a constitution? What's the best design and process? What are the costs of federalism? How can people be protected in a constitution? Ethnic peoples, women. And Australian federalism, to the degree it was understood, was seen as successful because we're peaceful, we're prosperous, but no reconciled past with Australia's First Nations. That's a work in progress. So what I did, I acquired some knowledge and skills, but without the degrees, dug deeper into the framework of the political policy operations, which we as citizens live in, work and play. And for me, as part of my day job, being an elected member of Parliament, in a state parliament, an upper house, then a federal one, and now back to state in a lower house. And many answers to these questions in Australia, we just absorb them through daily life. As a citizen of Australia with a national identity, but with these other identities played out at different levels of government. And to the extent, Chris, and you posed this question for me, to the extent that the Australian model has informed the processes that has been alive for decades in Burma, I'm not sure if any one model is singularly helpful. But upskilling on the Australian model, however, led me to the federal countries of the world and constitutionalism, and with the people of Burma, the Bama, the ethnic peoples, looking at all of that themselves, that's helped inform them. And I think that's the best way people of goodwill and advisors can engage. Looking at the way federalism is lived is instructive. The way things change, some through agreement, courts, legal and constitutional changes. With my work in the parliaments, people often would assume that constitutionalism, constitutions only changed through law. They changed through conventions, they changed through practice as well. And we would talk about them. Intergovernmental relations. And I had a close look at how that plays out in Australia. And that's useful to this whole discussion and debate. I worked on a program right across the government in Myanmar, machinery of government, and it had federalism included in it, which wouldn't have happened a long time ago. It was there on the margins, but it was there. And Dr. Leon and I were at the first State Constitution Knowledge and Skills Workshop in 2001. And I was a primary resource person. It was a huge privilege, but a huge responsibility. And to add to it, there were instructions to work on state constitutions without reference to a federal constitution, which became apparent that that was a bit challenging and not able to happen. But that brings us to today, and the past cannot be escaped because it shaped the here and now, no doubt. And I've just re-engaged with Dr. Lian Sakong and his ministry, the CRPH, the Federal Affairs Committee, and some other advisors. But the key question is, how do you federalise a state that has architecture already in place? And how do you accommodate top-down desires with bottom-up desires and structures? And how do you make fiscal federalism work? And these are questions that Dr. Lian's working on. Does it mean fiscal equalisation? But Burma lends itself to federalism. It's multi-ethnic, multilingual, multi-religious, albeit with one that dominates. But is it an ethnic nationalities federalism or a geographic federalism? Or do all of those have to be fused? How do you ensure all of these things? But the big challenge is to advance federalism, the new framework, the FDC, the Federal Democracy Charter that leads the way, the NUCC mechanism, which a few decades ago, Lian, would have been the real People's Constitutional Convention that was planned and agreed to under the Gandhi Hall Declaration. But look, these are issues that confront the whole process, but there is a change and there's goodwill, to make this work, the sharing of power, the division of power, which is what you have in the Constitution and what you have in a federal system. Yes, there's a long way to go. I'm not Pollyanna about it, but the time is right and the opportunity's there. So I'll leave it there because the questions are for you, Dr. Lian, and I want you to go for it because everybody's waiting to hear from you and you to answer the questions.
Thank you, Janelle.
Good, Janelle. This is some very tempting questions have come forward, and you've really put the cat among the pigeons, if I can put it that way, because of the nature of federalism in Myanmar over time, a lot of which, unfortunately, derived from the way the British governed their colonies. But there we are. That's for that. I'd like to invite a very quick comment and question, if there is one. First from Mary Tetyaman Aung. She is a prominent member of the Myanmar Students Association of Australia, and she may have a comment from the mind and mouth of the youth, because the youth are often left out of these sorts of discussions. Mary, do you have anything you can say?
Yes, thank you very much, Chris. And thank you so much to our speakers today, Mr. Lian and Janelle as well. It's a very informative session and it was really interesting. I did also quite learn a lot because just a brief disclaimer, I'm in no way an expert in politics or federalism, but I only have really basic knowledge on the topic, presumably like similar to other young people of Myanmar as well. But one thing that I'm really sure is for Myanmar, a wonderfully diverse country with many different ethnic groups, federalism is the best way to move forward. And also young people recently have also become like more aware of the situations and the atrocities by the military regime, like the regime past and present being committed in the ethnic region and territories. So as a Burma young person myself, I pretty much like feel guilty for not seeing those things sooner or act on these. And there are also many of us who feel the same way, hence the recent social media campaign called We Are Sorry or We Apologize, Dambambare, to the oppressed ethnic people. Because we believe that only like when we acknowledge and recognize the oppression that the ethnic groups have suffered before, we'll be able to change and move forward. So I and the most of the Generation Z people would really love to see Myanmar where everyone thrives equally regardless of their religion, ethnicity, gender, or race. That would be the kind of place or country where I will want my children to grow up in. So yeah, that's pretty much all for me today. And there are also many youth who are present today at this seminar from our Australian Myanmar Youth Alliance. And I'm pretty sure they will have things to add to it. And there are also many questions in the chat that I've seen, really good ones. I'm really looking forward to the answers to those from our speakers as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's really good to hear. Now, there's one other question I'm going to invite a man to put to you, and that's from Michael Breen, who has been working alongside another one of the people who's here, but I'll only choose Michael for now, to speak about the work that he's done on federalism and the nature of federalism for Myanmar over many years of hard work. Michael.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to our speakers, and also especially like to thank Mary for those very powerful words. It's a little bit difficult to follow. As Chris mentioned, my expertise is in federalism. I'm a comparative political scientist from the University of Melbourne. And I've done a lot of my research is focused on Asia, federalism, ethnic politics, and Myanmar. And so it was really a great opportunity, Minister Lian, to hear you speak today. And I've read some of your work. I think perhaps that you have been given some of my work by others. I just want to mention a couple of aspects of my work and follow on with a couple of questions as well, if I may. I know Chris had said one, but I have probably 20 questions, but I'll try to keep myself to two. So one aspect of my research relates to federal design issues and how they interact with federal boundary delineation, electoral systems, and political parties. And doing comparative work across Asia and also some other regions led me to the conclusion about the design of boundaries being particularly important to avoid this kind of bipolarity. So one part is splitting up the dominant group across a number of states and regions. But the other part is not necessarily having pure ethnic states, so to speak, but having 2 or 3 major groups incorporated into one area, which changes the balance of power and creates new critical masses, but also prevents new ethnocracies rising, so to speak. The second is to have a mixed member electoral system that is mostly majoritarian to create more political stability, but still has proportional representation to promote inclusion and to prevent one-party dominance. And the third one relates to political party engineering. So we have a situation in many ethnically divided states where you have mostly or only ethnic political parties. This can be quite unstable. My research leads me to the view that ethnic parties are okay so long as they are not the ethnic parties of the dominant or majority group. And I think we have some clear examples of where this has happened in Myanmar. And the other part of my research that's particularly relevant is I did with some colleagues, deliberative polling on federalism in Myanmar. And when we engage with members of the public, including Burmese, and we had some sessions where we had a majority Bama, we found that support for federalism increased quite a lot. But the thing that was really interesting was, particularly among the ethnic nationalities, the support for an ethnic basis for federalism decreased quite a lot. People wanted more territorial and regionally focused federal models. And so that was quite a surprise and also really interesting. So I guess my questions relate to those aspects, and I'm interested to know what, if any, consideration has been given to changing the numbers, names, and boundaries of the states and regions as they are today. Or is this, a starting point of the negotiation? And then secondly, regarding political engineering, which is obviously quite political party engineering, which is obviously quite difficult at the best of times. But there is opportunity now because those major parties that would be affected by reforms are not necessarily having the same level of influence. And what is the role for public deliberation in all this? So, for example, will the NUCC be looking at involving the public and considering potentially deliberative democratic methodologies to try and find some moderation of some of these issues? Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. I think, Minister, we might turn to you now. Quite a bit of what Michael has just said is encapsulated by the questions that have been put into the margin, as you might have noticed. But in particular, the issue of ethnicities, which has been built as a way of dividing people, I suppose, in Myanmar ever since the British did that census in the 1890s, and remains with us today. And a lot of what we see now in tensions between ethnicities are built on essentially what I would see as division. How do you plan to handle that through the NUG? Or do you think this is something which can be dealt with as a second level issue?
Well, thank you so very much for your question. And then I would like to say thank you again for giving me this opportunity. I just came in and then I was late. Sorry for being late. And then as soon as I came in and then I just start speak. So I was not quite aware of all the, the things that happening. And then I also look at, and here is 74 participants, huge group of people. So I'm so thankful. I thought that I showed you a few faces and then only this group of people were there, but 74 is a big group of people. And thank you also for Mary remarks and then also Michael's question. I think Michael's question, you know very well about the situations, and as Janelle has already mentioned, I think as NUG, we are not able to start discussing about the constitutions and constitutional matter yet, because this is what we would like to do through the platform of NUCC. And then NUCC, as I mentioned, is still in the formations period. We are not quite finished yet. We were supposed to finish on this month, but it seems we will not be able to finish in this month, but it will come. But on the other hand, we are also engaging a number of activities with the people. And then from my ministry, what we did is, what we call is number one is federal dialogue. But federal dialogue actually is a dialogue between the expert and the people, stakeholders. For example, like the scholars, and NUG ministers, scholars and CRPH, MPs, and so on. So we're starting this kind of dialogue. We will extend this kind of dialogues more and more. The second activities that we are doing is what we call is federal papers, in which we publish a series of papers and then distributing knowledge about federalism, but mainly based on our country's context. Without based on our situation, then federalism will be just a study. So I think that is very important based on our country's situation. The third activities is what we call is federal consultation. I think consultation is the most important areas. Currently, what we could do, as I mentioned, is only online. The good thing is that now we could do a lot of activities with inside group, like workers union, teachers union, and then the group in Chin State, the group in Kachin State, Karenni State. So based on areas, based on the groups and so on. I think this is very, very useful. But in terms of what we are going to look at our future constitution, what kind of principle we are going to apply, what kind of constitution we are going to produce. I think this is a big question, and then this is a big struggle that we are engaging. But first of all is, I think our future constitution will be based on the charter that we produce on the 31st of March, but which we are reviewing. And then I think we'll come up in our charter, there is 5 guiding principles for federalism and then 37 policies principle. But now we extended to around 70 principles, which I think is very encouraging. And then let me also mention about, for example, myself, where I joined NUG as a Chin and as a CNF member. The reason is that I engage in the peace process as the vice chairperson of UPDJC for the past 10 years. And then we propose all these principles from SNCA, and then after 2015 for Union Peace Accord, Union's Accord. But every time we proposed all these principles, the military always block. So we could not get any genuine, any real principle for federalism and for democracy. But a lot of people might think that why Min Aung Hlaing took over the state power again, why this military coup again. Of course, there might be a lot of reasons. But for me, I think Min Aung Hlaing and the military are afraid that last year in August, 2020 August, we have Union Peace Conference. At that conference, Aung San Suu Kyi proposed her own federal principle, 5 principles. That is what now we call the guiding principle for federalism in the future. And then if you compare Aung San Suu Kyi's federal principles and our proposal, I think that is very similar. And then military realized that when the government and then NLD and ethnic groups come together, they would not be able to resist. So I think that is one of the reasons that they have prevented, and then they have done what they have done. So one of the reasons of the military coup might be related with our federal principle. So I think we are adopting those federal principles. And then Michael, you are asking specific questions like state boundaries, and then for example, like others important question. And as you know, there are ethnic-based state or geographical-based state and so on. That is not only the question of federal theory. It is more about political question. So I think political question and theoretical questions should not be mixed. In terms of theoretical question, of course, we are going for federal principle, federalism, democracy. And then, for example, the division of powers should be there. All the states should have enjoyed their right and so on. That kind of theoretical aspect, we have been preparing quite so many years already. For example, as Janelle mentions, from 2001, we started a state constitution drafting process. And from 2005 to 2008, we produced a federal constitution draft. So this kind of theoretical question we have answered. But political question like state boundaries, that is sensitive issues, we cannot produce alone. That is where we need public consultation. That is where we need, I think, we have to talk to the people who are living there and so on. I think that is sensitive question. We need a lot of consultations and so on. And then in terms of, for example, whether we would like to adopt state-based, ethnic-based state or geographical-based state, I think our country demands that we cannot go for one single method, one single approach will not be, I think, solve the problems. I think the reality is that there are already 7 ethnic states, historically existing 7 ethnic states, which we cannot abolish, which we cannot ignore. That is there already, historically. But on the other hand, based on what we call is Pima or Central Burma, where majority Burma are there, but of course there also are a lot of ethnically mixed regions. So these, I think, we should be geographical based state. Yangon, Mandalay, Piku, it cannot call Burma Pine or Burma state. I think that should be called in the name of geographical names. That is what we have already agreed through federal constitution drafting process that we engaged from 2005 to 2008. And then in 2008, we came out that we would adopt 2 systems, ethnic based and geographical based. So I think it will be a better solution for all of us. And then on the other hand, we cannot stop either that a certain ethnic groups or certain geographical based people would demand a new state. I think the new state option should also be open. So I think that is a number of questions. In terms of theoretical aspect, we have been preparing so, I must say, so well, consulting with international experts like Janelle and other friends. And I think we have been doing, for myself, for example, 20 years, I have been doing these things for 20 years already. So theoretical aspect, yes, we are quite prepared, but political aspect is more important. This is where we need a lot more consultation. And as we all know, constitution cannot be drafted or produced without the people participation. If we produce constitution from outside, what would be the difference from 1974 constitution and 2008 constitution? 1974, the socialist regime produced their own constitution and imposed on the people. And in 2008, the military produced their own constitution and imposed on the people without consultation with the people. So I think what our approach will be, as much as possible, we'll consult with the people. It will be people's approach with the people we can only bring. So Michael, you have a number of other questions like electoral system and so on. So this part of I think technical and theoretical thing is it will come eventually, and you know that I cannot answer you everything at once, and then it is not necessary to answer yet. I think the process and approach should be correct and right. This is what is important right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great
Thank you
answer.
very much. Yeah, that's very good. Thank you. That covers several of the questions which have been put in, but one question which we haven't touched on yet, but which actually relates to some of the things you said, has to do with the way foreign relations can be impacted by the type of federal government which you choose to have in the country. And the example that was given was of the Belt and Road Initiative from China, which involves crossing a lot of boundaries within Myanmar in order to get, for example, from Yunnan province to the Bay of Bengal, and then from Mandalay to Yangon to the south or to India. There's quite a lot of decisions that will have to be taken centrally, which will have a significant effect on people in their states and communities. How do you see that potentially being handled in the future? And I'll preface your answer by saying that one of the things that President Thein Sein did was to suspend anything being done on the Myitsone Dam, largely in response to the reaction of the people in the area to what that dam was going to do to their livelihoods and their homes. So he listened to people rather than a Kachin state government, for example. What do you think about these foreign relations issues and the BRI?
I do think that both foreign relations and all of our activities engaged by the NUG should be based on the people's, what the people want. And I think the people-oriented policy making will be, I think, the best. And of course, China and others would like to do very centralized, superficial kind of dreaming, or the whole regions, the whole, they wanted to control not only Asia, but they also wanted to control the Indian Ocean and Pacific Oceans. So this is their main strategy. Within this strategy, of course, you can see a lot of activities that they are engaging. And then in order to get energy supply from Burma, crossing Burma and so on. So if we talk about Chinese policy, to not only to Burma, but the whole region, I think it will take a lot of time. But what I would like to compare is Chinese policy and Indian policy in this regard. For example, India also engaging this kind of similar kind of dreams that they had dreams in early 1990s. So at that time, India's applied what they call was look east policy. And then Indian look east policy is to, instead of looking the Western countries, look the East and then working with the East. But what they did was, look east policy from India to the East across Burma. But even they reach Burma, they have to across Northeast India. And then in Northeast India, there are laws that protected the people like Mizo, Naga, Assam, and so on. So there, for example, in Mizoram, where they are ethnically, we are the same, they are also Chin ethnic group. So under the British rule, current Chin state, Mizoram state in India, Nagaland state, and Arunachal Pradesh are all under the Chin Hill regulation, kind of constitution that the British applied for us. That constitution protected our land. That constitution protected all our, outside, I don't know how to put it, invasion or outside influence. So the law that they keep for us was all the land must be under the Chin Hill regulation. The land can be owned by the Chins. So that is what they apply again, for example, in Mizoram state after a long revolution, and then also in Nagaland. In Mizoram state, the land is can be owned by the Mizo people. In Nagaland, the land can only be owned by the Nagas, and so on. That is one thing. The second thing is inner line permit, inner line regulation. That inner line regulations permitted, for example, the rest of Indian citizens cannot travel to those Northeast region very easily. They have to get permit first. So this is how I think the original people are protected by law. So Indian dreams of look east was not, it did not become what they thought because of these inner line regulations and then land ownership in Northeast. I think that was very important factor. If we have this kind of rule and regulations or the laws protect us, for example, in Burma, the Chin Hill regulation was totally abandoned. We could not apply anymore in Burma, although the name was Chin Hill regulation. So I think that is the problem that we are facing in Burma. No law is protecting us. So China is thinking everything that they want. So it will be huge problem for us without a proper rule and regulations. And then that can, of course, in a certain area, that can make a progress, development, so many other projects, you can do it. But on the other hand, it can also ruin and destroy our cultural heritage, our ways of life, and so on. So we have to look at the balance. We have to look at the balance. This is where we need to do this federal constitution and state constitutions more properly, I think. I don't know if I answered your question. That is a broad question, so I think this is not a yes and no answer. So,
well, all the questions are broad, Minister Lian. I'm afraid we can't help that in the short time that we have available.
Yeah.
I'd like to now go back to one of the points that was made by Mary to see how you might react to that. I can say this easily because I may be the oldest person here, perhaps with the exception of Alan Nichols, who's also among us. We old people think we know everything. The young people, who are the spearheads of the CDM and a lot of the work that's going on now in favor of democracy in Myanmar, the young people may have a different vision for the future of the country. And Mary kind of articulated that. What sort of consultations do you see yourselves having with the young people of Myanmar as you move towards a new federal future?
I think the young people are our future. I think this is, our hope as well. As I mentioned in my opening remark, the difference between 1962, 1988, and now is because of the young people. They are more open, they know better, they have, so I think when they accepted a federalism, I think this is the answer. If we could, the people in Burma could accept it the way our generation now are accepted in 1962, we wouldn't have this long civil war. We wouldn't have it. So I think that is our hope, our future. And then I think it is also very, very important that there are two versions of, multi-ethnic, multicultural approach. On the one hand is, totally ignoring existing cultural heritage, ethnic identity, for example, a customary law or whatever you call it. If we completely ignore and then accepted multiculturalisms, ethnicity, religions, culture, everything, then it can be a certain level is good for, maybe it can be good. But in multi-ethnic society, this is what we ethnic group are so afraid of. That is the reason where we are holding arms and fighting against to protect our ways of life. So our approach should be, I think, while accepting what is already existing, and then approach also for the future. So in this regard, what I would like to say is that mutual recognition and mutual respect is the foundation for our future. Without respecting each other, without accepting each other, then I think, for example, in Burma, what is going wrong for the past 70 years is that the so-called nation building process based on one religion, one ethnicity, one language. That approach was so dangerous. That is what we hold arm and fighting against. But on the other hand, mutual recognitions, for example, recognizing Chin as a Chin, Grand as a Grand, Chin as a Kachin as a Kachin, Burma as a Burma, Buddhist as a Buddhist, Muslim as a Muslim, Christian as a Christian. Accepting and recognizing each other mutually, I think this is the foundation. If we destroy that foundation, and then the way General Ne Wins and other generals has done, totally ignoring the existence of the Chin, totally ignoring, not recognizing the Chin language, the Grand language, not allowed to learn, not allowed to develop. It is just, I think, a cultural culturally, they are trying to kill us. I think I don't want to use the terms genocide, but it is kind of cultural genocide is what they apply for India method. So I think recognizing Chin as a Chin and then respecting each other, and in this way we can go forward regardless of our ethnicity, regardless of our religion, regardless of our culture. We can build a strong and united country. But on the other hand, the foundation should be also recognizing first.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Janelle to comment on a part of that and to use as the base of the question to Janelle the fact that in Melbourne, in Victoria, we had a quite big meeting of people from the diaspora community of all types and ages, with members of parliament in Victoria. And we talked about how an Australian state might be able to provide support to the federalism of the new Myanmar. And one of the things that I thought was important in that discussion was the work that's been done in Australia, in particular over the last 30 or 40 years, on multiculturalism, so that people are encouraged to retain the culture of the place where they were born and with which they grew, but to bring that together to strengthen Australia, so that multiculturalism actually strengthens the country. It doesn't weaken it, as some people might otherwise say. Janelle, do you have anything to say about the way these things affect the nature of federal Myanmar in the future?
Yeah, I've had many of those discussions in Burma and Myanmar with both all ethnic nationalities. And look, Leon's touched on it, I've touched on it. It's moving away from nation building that was just one, like Burma and Buddhism. So recognizing there were other ethnic nationalities, other religions and languages as well, and build it into the system, and not just accommodate the system for Burma. It has to be built into their system of government, into the political compact that will lead to the constitutional settlement. So, I think there's lessons from it, Chris, but it's not exactly able to be replicated, but there's good lessons from it in terms of inclusion. And often the catch cry in Burma has been unity, unity. And for me, it's the recognition of diversity and the respect for it and the accommodation of it that will bring the unity of purpose. And we're seeing more of that now. Not everything's perfect, but it's clearly there. So, that's my short answer, given the time we've got. Some lessons from it, but not totally able to be replicated given the political dynamics and history in Burma. And that's one of the things that often people, particularly a lot of our experts, our friends, have that great expertise, but it's also the political dimension of Burma. Have to have some understanding to be able to provide some, good support and good advice.
Just curious, am I still with you now?
Yes, you're still with us.
Okay, but I cannot on my video and so on, so I don't know what is my problem here. I'm sorry.
I'm the same. I'm looking at a sunbeam or something.
Okay.
But you're here, Dr. Leon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Janelle. Hello, Chris, are you still there?
I'm very sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. But there's one more question I'd like to put to the Minister in the time we've got available. We've got about another 10 minutes, Minister, if that's okay with you.
Sure, I'm okay.
It has to do with, given all the conflict there's been and everything that's been said about the Rakhine State and the Rohingya, what kind of reach out have you been able to do or think about with respect to the Rohingya in the future federal Myanmar?
I think that is good, very good question. My video is not working, so I will speak without showing my face. I hope it is okay.
We can see you, and so you can scratch your hair, do all sorts of things while you talk.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think that is a very important question. This is one of our country's problem. And I do have, I think at least 3 times, I have a meeting with the Rohingyas and other friends also. And then what I can promise them, and then what they can also agree with me is that we will going to build our country and our future together. So where all these ethnic group will be protected through constitution, I think in this constitution drafting process, in this constitution making process, we will be together, we will consult each other, what they want. So I think what is important is this constitution should be able to protect our future together. If the political system that we are going to establish, we are going to set up, the constitution, the law that we are going to set up cannot protect our future, cannot guarantee our future, then we'll be in this problem again and again. So I think we will going to have good consultation and make our constitution for ourselves together. I think that will be the answer. We cannot say that we'll give you this right and that right, that will be included and so on. Is I think it's empty promise. Instead, we will bring them and make the constitution together with all the people of Burma. So I think our policy now is no one left behind. No one should be, no ethnic group, no regions, no religious group should not be left behind in this process. We should consult them, we should bring them. So, and then as Janelle mentions, I think unity and diversity. Our diversity must be recognized and respect. Muslim community should be recognized and respect. Christian community should be recognized and respect. And Buddhist community should be recognized and respect. Everyone should be recognized and respect. But here is a challenge also. Some of our groups are, a little bit very extreme, that since the Burma majority, actually these are very minority group, those chauvinism, military group, those nationalists are very minority group, not all the Burma. So we are the same, Burma and Chin are the same, but some of the people would like to take a revenge on those what they have committed for the past 70 years. But if we're going to react them angrily, and then if we allowed ourselves to take a revenge, then I think it will be endless struggle. So on the one hand, we have to look the future where which is peaceful and where all the different ethnic groups and different religious groups can live peacefully together. So in this regard, I would like to answer also one question on I think the chat box that you mentioned. I have mentioned about our NUG government policy and methods, but I did not mention about negotiation. Currently, negotiation is not on our table yet. Not on our table yet, because if we say that negotiation will be the end solution, or talking to the military council will be the end solution, and I think people will not support us. So we have to work together with the people. But on the other hand, at the end of the day, what will happen? What tomorrow will bring us, we don't know. Every option is open. But currently, although we are looking for a peaceful solution, the military council is not opting for a peaceful solution. So we have to act and we have to do as the situation demands. That's I would like to answer. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. We are really just about at the end of our time. So let me ask Janelle whether she would like to say anything as a wrap up of what we've had so far. And then I'll come back to you, Minister, for your wrap up.
Thank you, Chris. Look, it was a good conversation, but it's the start of many that will take place over this period of time, obviously not with the minister because he needs to be focused on all of those issues, but it's a conversation the minister's been heavily engaged in for well over 30 years now. But it's at a stage where he can see that there's hope for a federal democratic union, and that encourages him and encourages all of us as well to give that support to it. It's not easy. It will be fraught, it will be difficult, there will be challenges, there'll be challenges, within states, as we talked about, in terms of many different ethnic nationalities within one state. But for the first time, there's an opportunity, as extreme as it is, as extreme as the conditions are and the challenges are, and there's that recognition. And somebody was asking a question about, why now? Why is it different? And I talk about it as a liberation of the mind as well. Everyone's been constrained working with the architecture in Burma, working with the bifurcated government, working with the constitution that not many people wanted. And there's been the liberation from that and able to speak more freely. There's been the issue of the Rohingya as well, that sort of dogged a whole lot of things in Burma and the conversation and with neighbours, but there is a change. And look, I come from politics. I know a lot about slogans, but no one left behind is the right slogan. And I'll leave it on that.
Thank you very much. And just as a comment of what you just said before I go to the Minister, one of the things we've tried very hard to do in AMI is to work with universities to get them out of rote learning and into something where people give some do critical work on issues and bring that forward for discussion. I think what we've seen from the CDM is a liberation in the way students talk and speak and think, very different from what we would have seen 20 years ago. And that's no disrespect for the 88 generation. Minister, how would you like to appraise what we've said? And allowing that Janelle recognises that you're very busy and can't spend much time with us, we hope you'll be able to nominate other people, because we will continue with this subject of federalism right up until the new flag flies.
Well, thank you once again. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak here. And I think this is very important forum. I think I'm very glad to hear also that you would continue these discussions, which is so important. And then I saw several friends, even from inside Yangon and so on, are joining. I think this is a very global conversation that taking place here. And I think, as I said, constitution making is very important to engage with the people. Without the participation of the people, we cannot produce a meaningful constitution, the constitution that will guarantee the future of our country and our people. So we have been in this struggle for so long, and then we have prepared quite some times. But as I said, till today, what we could do was only in preparation, only in terms of theoretical aspect. But what is more important is to consult and engage dialogue with the people. All the level of the people, the younger generation, the older generations, many different ethnic groups, many different religious groups, many people around the world. I think this is very, very important. And then also I would like to encourage also that this kind of discussion that is taking place outside Burma also is very important. Our country was, as you all know, very isolated from 1962 to 88. During that time, my generation, we could not speak English. We could not know what is going on in outside of the world. And when we started our demonstration, we did what we did, but without knowing what will come next. But these generations, I think they know what they are doing, and then they also know what will come next, and then they also clearly able to identify what they would like to see for their own future. I think this is the different. That's why, and after General Ne Win took over the state power in 1962, there was several movements. 1962 July 7 movement, 67 Jun Sui movement, 73 Alotama movement, 74 student movement, and then Utan Yikin, and so on. But only after 88, and then even 88 generations, our generation of 88, could not define the future very clearly. We wanted democracy, but the country also needed a federalism. The country also needed to give the right and equal opportunity for all ethnic group and all religious group. So this is the different now. And then we are hoping, I think we are united in what we want to achieve, what we want to see for our future. I think we will be able to do it. And then the military coup is a failed coup. We should push more, and then we should fight more. We need your help more than before. We need it. And please do more for us, not only in terms of verbal conversation and idea exchange, but also physical assistance like financial assistance, technical assistance, and others also. And then also diplomatic assistance. We are in now credential challenge at the United Nations, which we also need your support. And then also the people are fighting on the ground. So
Thank you.
Fighting is, yeah, thank you so much. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I didn't mean to stop you, but I think we have to return the Zoom to its owners. And I'm very grateful to you for what you've been able to give us today. And I repeat that we will continue to support your work. Federal Myanmar is something that those of us in AMI deeply believe in, and we want to help you achieve the best result for the people of Myanmar, all of them, from all geographies, all regions, all ethnicities, all everything. We believe in that kind of Myanmar. So we will do everything we can to help you, and we will work with Janelle's advice with the people that you provide who need to know things about something specific. We can try and get that together for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we will do all those things, and I thank you. And to everybody else, I thank you all for being with us today. The next of these seminars will be on Monday, the 25th of October. And at the moment, our thinking is that it will be on the issue of food security, because I think that one of the greatest challenges that Myanmar will face in the time after that date is the availability of food. It's going to be very tragic for a lot of people around the country, and the consequences of that could be dramatic. So thank you very much for being with us, and thank you, Mary, for your comments from the eyes of youth. Thank you, Michael, for your comments and your question. And I can say that as for the youth, we are looking at putting on some interns in AMI to work with the Myanmar youth and hopefully, Minister, provide things that we can publish and provide to you as well about the views of youth as we see them from here, where we have such a big and active and knowledgeable youth population in Australia, Myanmar youth. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you
so
in a
much.
month, if not earlier.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And I
Thank
will send
you.
a recording later this week for the whole meeting. If you miss any part of this meeting, you will get it later. Thank you.
We will send
Thank
that link to
you.
you, Minister.
Thank you.